Hey everyone, welcome to the 479th episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patrons Alexander Terentiev, Steve Goot, and Brian Cates. I'm Warren Kaplan.
And I'm Matt Unlow. Today we've got Evan Wise on the show. He's an editor, writer, and producer on the hit HBO show Chimp, which is up for Emmy consideration as we speak. So if you're an Emmy voter, consider dropping Evan a little vote. Chimp Crazy. It's a very popular show on HBO.
Yeah. He's also, he mentioned to us, it's in his signature. He's Evan Wise, ACE.
Yep.
We talked about it a little bit, but it is kind of interesting how there's some affiliations that you put in credits and in your signature and stuff, like ASC, the Cinematographers Society, CSA, the Casting Society.
But you don't put DGA. It's not like it says
DGA.
Martin Scorsese, DGA.
No, but you do put PGA, but you were telling us that has nothing to do with being a member of the PGA.
Correct. It has to do with, it's an official mark that has to do with the type of work that you do on a film. So I think it's kind of like essentially, for people who are quote unquote vanity producers, they wouldn't get a PGA mark. Like when I did it for my feature, it was really important to us, but I had to fill out specific paperwork on the things that I did that would validate me as a PGA mark, basically. But I am not a PGA member, so to speak. I'm not like a dues paying member.
Is it related at all to who would be receiving the Oscar? Like if the movie was nominated for Best Picture?
I don't think so. Because certainly there are people who are kind of more like EPs who are winning those awards, right?
I don't think so. I think to get the Oscar...
Oh, maybe I could be speaking out of turn, actually. You could be right.
Yeah. My buddy Ken Fuhrer, he used to work for this company Bonafide when they made the movie Little Miss Sunshine. And his bosses were producers, normal capital P producers on the film, but there were 6 producers or 5 producers, something like that. And the Academy said only 3 producers can come up to accept the award. And they were, because they had maybe brought the least money in, but they brought Michael Arndt, they brought Val, the directing duo. They didn't get to go on stage. And that's, I think they changed all the rules for how you determine who gets the Best Picture award after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That does remind me, I finally listened to the Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg episode of The Town.
Oh, yeah.
And they talk about how they talked to tons of different studio heads and how all of them brought up wanting to be thanked by name in award shows, which is a plot point in the studio. And I kind of thought was a little strange and arbitrary. I had no idea that it was such a thing.
Oh, that it's real, because
it's real.
Yeah, because they said, Seth and Evan were saying that those people never get thanked, even though they're the ones that are literally...
Well, they never get credited. They never...
Oh, right.
Yeah. So their name isn't on the movie, which is this is the only official record is whether you get thanked or not. It's very funny. Anyway, this is a great conversation with Evan. We talk a lot about the process behind a hit HBO show, right?
Yeah, and editing documentaries, especially when you have a ton of footage, which can be intimidating.
And I think that this creative approach stands out as pretty different from a lot of the interview-based documentary filmmakers that we've had on the show in the past. We were talking off the mic. We've talked to a lot over the years at this point. Luke Coram is a regular guest, Jody McVeigh-Schultz. I feel like we've had a lot of people come back time and again. But this conversation, there's plenty of stuff that they have in common, but also just the sheer amount of footage and the way that they dive into a subject without having an explicit narrative arc to begin with. Not just being opportunistic, but literally planning on discovery and not knowing the story for literally years is part of the plan and part of the process that's unique to this company, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I didn't know that Chimp Crazy was directed by the same guy that did Tiger King.
Which we get into a little bit. There are some complications, right? Evan said so himself. It's complicated when your director is famous for making a movie where half of the cast is in jail by the end.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I think you'll enjoy it. And before we talk to Evan, I just want to remind people we have a Patreon, patreon.com/justshootitpod. It's pretty much the only way you can support us if you are enjoying this podcast. Helps us pay for our editor, our server space, all the things that we spend money on, which Not a ton of stuff, but editing is kind of the big one. So patreon.com/justshootitpod if you want to throw us a buck or two. We appreciate it. Without any further ado,
let's talk to Evan Wise.
Did I tell you? I think I told you the story, Matt, of Evan, how he freaked us out.
How you thought I was dead?
So Evan stayed in my Airbnb and he was like pretty good guest. He was pretty communicative. Like if we were like, if we'd see him walking down the driveway, we'd say hi. If we'd like send him a message like, hey, sorry about the gardener, whatever, working at 6 a.m., he'd like respond to us right away. He was just super like, chit chatty. Like he was dating someone. We like talked to her. And then one day, I forget what happened, like some mail came or there's some reason you were staying with us for like a month or something, right? Or 3 months.
I was like 4 months.
4 months, like a long-term stay. We wanted to ask you about something or something, and we send you like a message through Airbnb and no response. After a few hours, send you another message, just checking in. Just wanted to see if like, I forget, there was some construction, something.
This is like Evan at this point, is what you're saying. Yeah.
And so, that night, no word, next day, nothing. I'm like, we find your phone number, text you, no response, get like, there's like 1,000 Evan Wises. Like it's a really, no offense of it, not a great not the most Googleable name. And I'm trying to find you on Instagram. I think I added you as a friend. You didn't accept my request. And Kara and I, my wife and I were like, this is crazy because you were paying us to be at our house and you just weren't there. Like, well, we didn't know. It's not like we know what happens in the apartment. And
wink.
I've had like family members that are like diabetic that like died and nobody knew for a couple of days. Like I was like, we're starting to freak out. And then like 2 days passed. I think I found your mom on Facebook or something. And I like sent her a message. And then finally Kara and I were like, well, we just can't have like a dead body in our Airbnb. We gotta see what's up. So we go back there and we're like knocking. Evan, are you in there? We're going to come in. No answer. We open the door. We walk in and, if Evan left, you would expect there to be nothing there. But everything was there, including his laptop, which like, how does a human being leave someplace without their laptop, especially an editor from New York, right? I assume you have your laptop with you at all times of the day. So we were walking around. I'm like, Kara, like, come with me. Like he's probably dead in the bathtub or something. And we're just like slowly walking through the apartment and nothing. He's not there. And we were just completely freaked out. And then I think like the next day you came back and we're like, Evan, where the fuck were you, man? And you're like, geez, I went snowboarding. I went off the grid, drank snow for 3 days or whatever you do. Slept in a tent.
I was backcountry snowboarding in the San Bernardino Mountains and I was sleeping in a tent with my buddy and there's no cell reception. And that's like a thing that we do. And it's very, very normal to us. But I didn't think that I had to like check in with you guys before I left.
You should tell your mom, Evan. You should. You've seen 127 hours or whatever it is. You do need to tell people.
No, it's very normal for me to do this.
Yeah.
I remember you said, sorry, mom, to me.
You said you should apologize to your actual mother, Evan.
Well, I don't remember if I contacted your mom or if she responded to me or not, but I was just, anyhow. So that's how I know Evan Wise. But now he has a show on HBO. Well, I guess it came out, but it's up for some award nominations called Chimp Crazy. Did you tell us it's the number one most watched documentary on HBO?
It's the most watched documentary series on HBO in the last 5 years.
Okay, cool. Well, that's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's a 4-part documentary series on HBO, and it's about humans and their relationships with chimpanzees as pets. And it focuses primarily on this woman named Tanya Haddix, who, there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this, so just, it's been out for a year. Get over it. But basically, she had a relationship with this chimpanzee. She worked at a chimpanzee facility. There were 7 chimpanzees, and PETA had been trying to shut it down for years because they weren't treated well. They were being held in captivity in like old jail cells. And eventually PETA won this lawsuit and they come to take the chimpanzees away and bring them to a sanctuary in Florida. And when they show up, one of them is missing. And that's the end of the first episode. And fast forward, Tanya has stolen this chimpanzee, spirited it away into her basement where she kept it for a year. And we filmed with her the whole time.
Wait, so you were...
What? So you how are you not an accomplice to chimpanzee kidnapping?
Well, we didn't know initially.
Wait, sorry. When you say we,
well, we as in the production. I came onto the project. They had been filming for 2 years already. So when I came in, I started about a month after Tonka was found in her basement and was already safely at a chimpanzee sanctuary in Florida.
And chimpanzees, for people that don't know, are like very dangerous, right?
Yeah, well, when they're young, they're not. When they're babies, for like the first 5 or so years of their life, they're like little children. They're really cute. They learn human-like behaviors, and they act just like babies. You can dress them up in clothes. You can teach them how to, go to the bathroom and make sandwiches and stuff like that. And then they hit puberty, and then they get really big and really scary, and then they get
like really strong.
hurt you. Yeah, they have the strength of like 5 people, and they're really smart. Like if you keep a chimpanzee, you can't have a combination lock on their cage because they'll figure it out and open it.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like they'll start at like 000 and they'll get.
They'll like watch you do it, and they'll like remember what you did, and they'll
figure out the numbers. That's crazy.
They're really, really smart.
I was
smarter
at the
than
zoo.
Dolphins.
Well, I think maybe, right? I was at the zoo with my kid and her entire daycare class a few weeks ago, and
got infiltrated by a chimpanzee.
Well, the LA Zoo has like these great steps that everyone has snack time at. Where you watch the chimps. It's right next to the giraffes. But there was one unpopular chimpanzee, and I was like, it was just like constantly trying to like approach the group, and then the rest of the group was just like screaming at it, throwing things. It was like, I think the zookeepers need to intervene. I would not have been surprised if there was bloodshed. I don't want to be the zookeeper that intervenes. I'll tell you that. Yeah, sure. Yeah, totally. And I'd heard actually that there were some issues with that group of chimpanzees at the LA Zoo before, like where people were like, there's an incident. They're like, normally they're out during this time. It's crazy loud, and they're all there's like a backstage area, like, where they are fed or whatever. So I guess all I'm saying is that I had a teeny bit of exposure to the potential violence that a chimpanzee can commit, and it is blood curdling.
Yeah, if you look it up, you can Google like chimpanzee attack videos, and it's not pretty. Like they're really strong, they're really smart, and when they're angry, it's terrible.
Do you have an opinion? I'm sure you're familiar with the discourse on Twitter about gorilla versus 100 men. Who would win?
Yeah, there's actually a comedian on the Daily Show, Josh Johnson. He has a bit about that, and he actually worked in Chimp Crazy into part of that. Oh, and I think that 100 people could take down a gorilla eventually. You would lose quite a few, and it would not be fun.
I would want to be number 100.
Yeah,
what I mean?
Absolutely. 99 maybe, but be in the back of the line.
Matt is like the Frasier of fighters. Can we talk about this?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you like bananas?
Yeah. I'm the Niles of fighting.
But yeah, chimpanzees, you don't want to have them in your home, and this woman did. Yeah, it's a really wild story.
So are you the lead editor on the show?
I was the producer, writer, and supervising editor.
So you're a writer on it.
You were a producer, a writer, and the supervising editor?
Correct, yes.
Great, gotcha. Okay.
Oh. Can you break that down for us a little bit, especially on a project that you came on 2 years after they started filming? Yeah,
well, basically I was the first guy on in the edit. And the company that made it Good Films, which is Eric Good, the director of Tiger King, the way that they kind of work is they sort of get themselves into like a genre or an area or something, and then they just shoot. They shoot like crazy. They have so much footage. So they started getting interested. Eric got interested in smaller monkeys many, many years earlier while like working on another project, and he met somebody that also had like capuchin monkeys. They're really small, and they're like
the outbreak monkey.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. The outbreak monkey, the friends monkey, like probably all the monkeys that you see.
Wasn't it the same monkey?
I don't know.
I think there's Marcel.
I think working monkeys.
I think it was the same. Yeah. Anyway,
so they started filming a lot of what they call monkey moms, and it's just like regular people, often women, who just have these monkeys in their home and treat them like members of their family. And within this subculture, chimpanzees are kind of like the gold standard. So immediately he became interested in
the doodle.
Yes,
of monkey pets.
Yeah. So they started filming with anybody who had a chimpanzee, and then I think they started filming in like 2020, like maybe like spring of 2020, like just after COVID started.
So this is on the tail of Tiger King.
Yeah, they had been filming. Actually, some of the monkey moms with the capuchins are actually in Tiger King, I think, for a fraction of a second. A lot of the Good Films projects, like one thing will become something and then spawn many other things that become things later.
So I know there's much more to the story, but I gotta pump the brakes already, and feel free to opt out if you can't speak to this. But we just had my old friend Jody McVeigh Schultz on, who is a documentary EP and director, And it just so happened I was like at his house for like a birthday party like the same week. So I spent a lot of time with Jody and all of his doc friends. And I was reminded of how, similar it is to narrative or commercial directing, where it's like you're really stuck on a schedule and you have a budgeted number of days and, man hours, and all of those kind of budget considerations are a big part of how they approach what sort of tape they need, right? Like how many days worth of interviews with which subjects and travel, all that stuff is part of it, right? In the same way that Oren or I would approach a shoot, right? And they spoke with such admiration and envy of people who get to really embed themselves, something that's not interview oriented, it's much more verite, right? And the economics of that are really complicated, right? So to hear you say, Evan, like, oh, they just kind of like find interesting people and shoot for a long time and know that eventually you're going to be able to find an incredible show there. Yeah. Can you speak to that in terms of approach and honestly, even in terms of the economics? Like, how does a deal like that work?
It's really, really rare. So the people who you were talking with, they're right. Like, and I was envious of that too. This is the first time I've experienced, well, maybe the first and a half time I've experienced a project like this, but basically good films, they self-finance their projects for a really long time. I edited Chimp Crazy for a year before HBO bought it. And I kind of knew that I thought that they would. And there was a connection between me and HBO and good films and HBO. So we all sort of were like, okay, this is probably going to happen. Well, I came onto the project because I'd done a lot of shows for HBO and I was finishing up one and I said, hey guys, I'm available. Like what's going on? And they said, oh, we would love for you to meet with these people at Good Films.
So they did some matchmaking. I see.
Well, no, they wanted me to do a different show that is going to be coming out, I think maybe next year, HBO, that Good Films had already been making for a long time. And it was sort of similar to something I had just done. And they already had somebody on board that was very similar, like skill set to me. So it was like, it's probably not the best fit, but we had a good time talking to each other. And then I'm getting off the phone and the executive producer, Jeremy McBride, he's like, let me send you something and I'll call you tomorrow. And then he sent me like a 20-minute sizzle with chimpanzees. And then the next day I was like, I would love to work on this show. We got to figure this out.
20-minute sizzle. That's like a sizzle.
Yeah. It was like three. There's three there's one main story in Chimp Crazy, and then there's two ancillary stories, or is it? No, three actually. And it was like two of those stories. So it was really like a very wide sizzle. Yeah.
And who edited that sizzle? If you were the first?
I don't know. It had been made a long time ago, and there had been various projects that were made of some of the, like somebody made like a 30-minute short doc about just the Pam Rosaire, who's in the first chimpanzee person we meet in episode 1, the circus lady. And I don't know what they were planning on doing with it, but it was 30 minutes long and it was pretty good, but it wasn't Chimp Crazy. And then pieces of that ended up entering into Chimp Crazy.
And it's interesting. So they introduced you to the project even though they hadn't bought it yet?
No. So HBO introduced me to Good Films to work on something else. And when we kind of realized it wouldn't be the best fit, then Good Films was like, by the way, check this thing out. And then I had to call HBO the next day and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I don't want to do the show you want me to do, but I'm going to do this other thing with the same guy. But I kind of had a feeling that it would end up coming back around and working out. And it did.
How cool is it to have a relationship with like an HBO or Netflix? Like Matt and I, we work with a lot of cinematographers and they'll like hit us up like, hey, we should work together again, But we're like one person. But if you can be like, hey, HBO, what do you got?
It's really nice. It's really nice. And I have like a personal relationship with someone who's high up at HBO Documentary Films. We worked together 15 years ago on a food competition show. And she was a story producer. I was the editor. We just got along. And then, 15 years later, she's like, at HBO Documentary Films, and she called me and I've been working on her shows there ever since.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
It's interesting really though. Nice. Evan, you'd speak to this as well. How many places are purchasing this sort of documentary at this point, right? Like how many places can you shop it to?
There's probably more than you would think, but most of them don't get a lot of eyeballs. But your big ones, your HBO, your Netflix, your Hulu, your Apple, who am I free? I mean, all the major streamers.
Sure.
Really.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah. That's kind of a naive question because now that I'm thinking it out loud, that's true for all media, basically. Like anywhere that's buying shows now is buying documentaries. So it's not like it used to be like, well, I'm pitching a comedy. I can take it to Comedy Central and NBC and FX and all these places. Like now it's all the same buyers, basically.
Yeah.
Cool.
Really cool. Okay, so that's how you got onto the show. So you come in there, they've been filming for 2 years. It's interesting that you kind of had to get pitched the show to come on as the editor and producer and writer. But how do you, so you see that there's like a ton of potential in this just from the sizzle.
Absolutely.
But how do you
Instantly.
make it HBO worthy?
I mean, it takes a lot of people. We had by the end of it, we had a whole team. But I worked alone probably for like 2 or 3 months, and then I quickly realized like, oh, this is going to be really good, and 2, I need a lot of help. So I called my friend Tim Moran, who I've worked with a lot, a producer and writer, who actually lives in Argentina now, and I got him on, and then he and I started working, and then it felt right that we needed to bring on another editor, so I brought on my friend Chuck Divac, who I work with all the time, and both of these guys I've been working with for like 10 years. They're like 2 of my favorites. I work with them forever. So then we started cranking, and then we brought in Adrian Gitz as a 3rd editor, probably maybe like 7 or 8 months into it. And then Doug Abel was our 4th editor, and he had done Tiger King, so he had a relationship with Good Films already. And he's just like like everybody knows Doug. He's like a documentary royalty. So he did like Fog of War with Daryl Morris and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird question, but when you say I knew it was going to be good, like what makes, like if I have a bunch of footage
Oh, sure.
and I'm editing a documentary, how can you tell something's going to be good?
It was many of the major parts of the story had already happened. So I knew that he still steals the chimpanzee. I knew that she hides it in her basement. I knew that we were filming with her for a long portion of that. And the access was amazing. And I think our main character, Tanya, when you see Tanya, she leaps off the page. She's charismatic and interesting and strange and operates in like a lot of gray areas, and all of those things I just think are super intriguing. So right away, I want to know more about this person. I want to know more about this world that she lives in. I want to know more about chimpanzees. And I was confident that an audience would feel the same way.
Cool.
And it's not always like that, but it was just like truly like instantly. I was just like, she is a star, and this is going to be a hit.
So you're like, okay, great. Like you just the one pager has you, so to speak, has you hooked. So you alluded to like, oh, the first few months you're working quote unquote alone.
Yeah.
Excuse me. How do you start with 2 years worth of footage? And when you say when you're alone, like how literal is that? Are they just like, hey, Evan, we'll check in a week. Let us know what you're thinking.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think everything in this situation was very unusual to the way I've worked in my whole career, because it was self-financed. We didn't have deadlines. It was like, we could take as long as we want. We could take as much time as we needed. We had resources, which is almost never the case. There's always a tight schedule. There's always a very small budget. So yeah, I had the luxury to just like kind of watch stuff. And I started watching. What I like to do is I like to pick something that's like, okay, I know this is going to be on television. And then I watched that segment of raw footage first. And the first thing that I watched is there's a scene in the 4th episode where our proxy director, which we can get into a little deeper in a minute, is on the phone with Tanya, our main character, and she's basically telling him, hey, Tonka, our chimpanzee, is really sick, and I'm going to have to euthanize him. And that's like a really big turning point in the story. So like, okay, there's no way this is not going to be on television. Let me watch this first. And then I cut it. I just cut a scene, and it's always going to change, but it's just like putting the pen to paper and keeping the pen moving. So in the beginning,
you cut a scene, you're just literally like kind of finding some music and editing like the highlights of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you start with the conversation. So I mean, that phone call was probably an hour or so long, give or take. So I just watched it all. I made my notes, and then I went back and grabbed all the things that I thought were important or that I thought were catchy. And then I like to just kind of like, okay, I'm going to cut it in half. So then I take the hour and make it 30. And then it's like, okay, now I'm going to make it 15. And then at some point you reach a point of diminishing returns, and then you just like, okay, well, let me start to craft this and like put in the music and look for cutaways or think about archival footage that you might need or whatever. You just turn your editor brain on and start thinking, what else do I need to make this happen?
That's an interesting approach. So basically get rid of there's probably some food ways, curds, like metaphor here of
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, separating
but the
churning
cream
butter
on
and
You're basically
it's all dairy into very dairy heavy edit.
Yeah.
And so then you have so you start with this hour conversation, you get it down to like 15 minutes, and then you think like, what's the arc of this conversation? Like the beginning, middle, end?
Yeah, kind of. It's like, okay, well, I know that when she says I'm gonna euthanize this chimp, that's the climax. That's the most important part. So like that's automatically gonna go either at the end or close to the end. And then you think about like, I mean, it's also hard because this is the first thing you cut. So half the things that you're doing are wrong and they're totally gonna change once there's an episode that this lives in. But you just think like, all right, let's just start the conversation. Like maybe you start with some pleasantries just to get them out of the way, even though you're probably gonna get rid of that later. And then just think about like what's an interesting but efficient way to get to the climax, and then where do I go from there?
And so I think that makes complete sense. And if you think of like, the other known entities that you have, right? Like you probably have a sense of how many episodes it needs to be, give or take. Like I guess you don't have an episode order yet, so you don't even know.
No, we didn't then. But I mean, that was like the biggest question at the beginning. Is everyone kept asking like, "What is it going to be?" And I was like, "I don't know yet," and like, I felt so bad because they'd ask me every week. It was like,
sure.
And this was 2022, right?
Yeah, I started in, I think, July of 2022.
Because I feel like there's been a little trend, I could be wrong, of like these very short, like
4-part.
Yeah. Like we had the editor of, what was that documentary that the Safdie brothers produced about the call center? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
Telemarketers.
Yeah.
Telemarketers, yeah. Like that was 3 episodes.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I've worked on a lot of documentaries that were sold as a specific number, and then you get into editing and you go, oh, that's too many. Yeah. And then you have to stretch the story out. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that. And a great thing about working with HBO is that they don't really pressure you into, at least in the Chimp Crazy situation, they were very receptive to whatever number of episodes we felt told the best story. And we knew that it was 3, and then things ended up happening, and then we realized, oh, it's 4. So then it became 4, and it was never, it could have been 3, it could have been 4. It was whatever suited the story best.
So help me just wrap my head around this. What else do you know? Do you have like story notes from a story producer, or you had mentioned a proxy director? Like what?
Yeah.
It's not like they're just like, here's a hard drive.
It wasn't far off from that. And that's often not normal. Like again, the way that this is a very unorthodox way of making documentaries.
Sure.
But yeah, it was kind of like that. I mean, I could talk to people who had been involved. There was a producer who was involved for a while, and Eric, the director, and Jeremy, the executive producer, they had been involved since the beginning. So I could discuss with them, and they could tell me what happened. And then eventually, like, I got a breakdown, I think, of like, okay, on these shoot days, this is where we were.
Yeah. Because I guess like even just a conversation of like, hey, in your own words, tell me what happened. And those beats, like, okay, she has a phone call about euthanizing the chimp. We find out that the chimp was stolen. Like the raid on the PETA raid, like all of those little bits, you could put those on note cards and spread them out and say like, okay, well, this is how it goes chronologically. And maybe you start there, and you can kind of say, well, maybe that's a chunk. And so that's an episode, and that's an episode, and that's an episode. But that's basically it, essentially, that's what you've got to work with. And then you start whittling down from there. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I look at like the first couple of months I was on the show as more of like a fact-finding mission. We were all trying to I was trying to learn about them. They were trying to learn about me. We're all trying to learn about the material. And then when my friend Tim Moran came on, we started thinking about, okay, let's start writing out what it is. And he and I wrote the first outline together, which obviously changes dramatically, but you got to start somewhere.
And is that when your writing credit was born?
That was later, but I mean, I am a firm believer, and I feel like most documentary editors will tell you that documentary editing is writing, and no one's going to talk me out of that, because it's the same as if you were writing like a magazine article, but your sources are the footage. So we are choosing how the scene is going to play from start to end. We're choosing the order of the scenes. We are. And sometimes, if your show has voiceover, I've worked on plenty of voiceovers, so I'm literally writing the voiceover. But I'm sure most editors are doing that. And
temping it in, I imagine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And also knowing what's missing, right? Like, can we get a shot of this?
Exactly. Yeah. Can we talk to Tanya and ask her X, Y, and Z, because that would be really interesting to go here. So I try to push for a writing credit all the time. It doesn't always work out like that, but I do see a trend more and more now that documentary editors are getting credited as writers, and I think that is justly deserved.
And do you think, I guess what's interesting about the director of a documentary is like, do they have like a point of view when they're starting to work on this? Or are they just kind of like, let's go talk to these people and shoot stuff?
Some people, some people do, and some directors do, and some directors don't. Like a lot of it, I've worked with directors who were like, dead set on what they want, and they go out, they shoot it, and you put it together the way they want it, and then that's it. See you later. But many people will either don't have that strong of an opinion in the beginning, or it changes dramatically over the course of filming as you learn new information. That's what happens most often. It's like, they started making this documentary ostensibly about capuchin monkeys that are this big, and it ended up being something completely different that nobody could have predicted. So I think a key to being a successful documentarian is like, listen to your footage and know when you need to shift, because sometimes you'll find something amazing and it's not what you were looking for, and you need to make sure you're still looking for other things rather than just what you thought it was in the beginning.
I'm always envious of that moment in a documentary where it kind of explodes in a way that's so exciting as an audience member, but also I kind of like, I remember with like Queen of Versailles realizing like, oh, this movie is different than what the filmmakers were intending, and it's so much better. And just being like a little jealous of them in the moment as they realize, oh, this is a different movie. Like that doesn't happen to narrative filmmakers. Like we're never like, oh, I thought that this was going to be, a Nike commercial, and all of a sudden we're selling pancakes, like that does.
But there has to be some discovery, right? If in narrative where you realize, oh, maybe it works better some other way.
Yeah, yes, but not in this transformative sort of way,
right?
Or maybe
probably
it happens
more in
the
episodic. Like you have 22 episodes, and you realize people love this character, and they
sure.
Yeah, and you bring Jesse Pinkman back for the rest of the series.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, but that's still Breaking Bad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Queen of Versailles was about a real estate baron, and all of a sudden now is like this metaphor for a crumbling economy and like this extravagant woman in a big house.
I do wonder. I mean, I know Queen of Versailles just seems like perfect, like being in the right place at the right time.
Sure.
So does Chimp Crazy, and so does Tiger King, and so does so many documentaries. And it makes you wonder if the documentarian maybe had a hand in making it seem like everything fell into place in this super unexpected way. Like, remember we had the director on the Sleight of Hand, Luke.
Oh, sure.
Luke Coram, who did this like blind magician. Yeah, Dealt, this documentary about a blind sleight of hand magician. And it's just like he the spoiler, but he wins the magician of the year. Like, and that's like, was like, as a blind magician. And they were obviously filming way before that happened. So they didn't know that was going to happen.
I think in that case, they were searching for an ending, and they were relieved when they got one. Right.
Right. Yeah, I guess to your point, there could be a lot of things that give you that perfect.
But that movie was always about a blind magician, right?
Right.
Whereas Chimp Crazy was about a very different type of animal. Do you know what I mean? And like kind of different characters, and it evolved, right?
And when we shifted to chimpanzees, like they were actually trying to get a different woman, not Tanya, this woman named Connie Casey, who owned the facility that Tanya worked at. And Connie is like, didn't want to be on camera. She didn't want to talk. And then Tanya was like, I would love to talk. And then they recognized and the project shifted.
Yeah.
That's fun.
It's really fun. It's kind of magic. Like the discovery. And that's one of the things I love about documentaries is that like you kind of never know. And then it's really, really fun to figure it out, the process of figuring it out. And then when something organically happens, it changes it. It's like, it's really nice.
It's so funny. I'm editing this director's cut of this commercial that I shot. It's a 30-second commercial, and we have probably like 45 minutes of footage, which is an absurd amount of footage for a 30-second commercial.
Really?
And yeah, and we have
that's a shock to me. That's cool.
30 takes, for each line. And I'm sitting here just like agonizing over like, is this the correct 1.5 second? Or is this?
Don't forget, Evan, that means that our script is 1 page.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
for Chimp Crazy, we had 1,500 hours of footage.
Yeah, sure.
1,500. But I have such fear that I left something that's 1% better, on the cutting room floor. And when you have 1,500 hours of footage, to me, it would just be the most stressful thing to sit at that editing station and know like where to start.
Well, let me ask though, Evan, though, if you've got 1,500 hours of footage, there is a better, quote unquote, better creative decision that was left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah,
there has to be.
I'm sure there is. I mean, it's me and my coworkers' jobs to make sure that as few of those things are left on the floor as possible.
Yeah. And I'm not saying like you can do an incredible job, right? And still, just statistically speaking,
For sure.
there are at least opportunities maybe unexplored, right? Like whether they're better or not, right? Which is part of what Oren's anxiety is about. It's like, let's see it through. Let me try this other option. And if it's a little bit better, let's add it or not, right? It's impossible for you to do that, even with what it sounds like a very luxurious sort of schedule and creative freedom and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
How do you cope with that?
I think I try not to think about it, I guess. I mean, when I go to work tomorrow, after having this conversation with you, maybe I'm going to like go back and watch some old stuff again and make sure
what did I miss? What did I miss?
I mean, 1,500, I just put in the calculator. That's like 62 and a half solid days of footage.
Yeah.
Like there's no way to even watch it all.
I mean, you divide and conquer. And some of it is like, okay, you everything or all the interviews are transcribed, so you can kind of skim it and be like, okay, none of this is what is relevant to what I'm trying to say. So you can compartmentalize things and not use them. I guess you just have to trust that you've done a good job and that like some of those things have diminishing returns. But one of the great things about Chimp Crazy is that we had the time to pretty much go until we felt that the story was creatively exhausted, and then it's a really nice feeling, and you do not always get that. I mean, I think that the adage where it's like, art is never finished, it's abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of like your life. I mean, I'm not just the same for what you guys do too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We abandon all of the commercials.
Yes. But do you feel like when you have more time, when you are reviewing 1,500 hours of footage and trying 40 different storylines in your edit, that your final product is better?
Yeah, usually, but like by what magnitude is I think what you would debate. And sometimes like that extra little 5% is worth it. And sometimes, it's imperceptible to an audience and only you know it. And it feels good to you, but it's like kind of a wash.
Because you've won Emmys and Ace Awards and all that stuff. Like
lost Emmys, won an Ace Award, but never won.
Nominated for Emmys. What do you think are like the hallmarks of a good documentary? Like, I guess from your experience working on them.
I think a good documentary is something that takes the audience somewhere that they could never go, or shows them something that they didn't know about in a way that's interesting. Like this. Like nobody would ever be able to film this world, and most people don't know that it existed. You can have a chimpanzee as a pet. So that to me, is just interesting. And then another document that I did that got a bit of praise was this QAnon series I did for HBO about 4 years ago, and like the point of the doc was to find the person who is Q, which we did. And, we were sitting in the room with this guy and they were filming with this guy who was Q.
Is it, what's the word I'm looking for? Like we're 100% sure that this is Q?
I'm 100% sure. The director is 100% sure. I mean, I don't know if you can have complete certainty over it. And this person continues to deny it. But in the end of the series,
but he keeps winking at the camera too.
Yeah. He slipped at the end of the series.
It's not me.
Q slipped up.
Like the Jinx style?
Kind of. A little less incriminating than the Jinx. And it was on camera. But they both kind of knew. It's funny, like he slips up, and then both he and the director, who are both on Zoom, they both just burst out laughing because they each know like the implications of what just happened, and they have a good chuckle about it. But yeah, I mean, I would say I have 100% certainty that Q is Ron Watkins.
But do you feel like his followers believe that he's Q?
No. They think he's just a high-level government agent who's still out there just laying in wait for when he can be most effective to do whatever.
What? Did QAnon just disappear now that Trump's...
Well, it's
dormant.
It was still around. I mean, after Trump lost, it was a big blow to Q, and a lot of people kind of gave up on it. But Q limped along for a little while, and then it no longer had any power. So I think Ron kind of closed up shop. But in the midterm elections that year in 2022, Ron, who is Q, was running for Congress in the first district of Arizona, which I think is in Phoenix somewhere. And then miraculously, when Ron needed some attention or a boost, Q started posting again. And then they did a bunch of goofball things where they like forgot to mask their IP. Or I forget exactly what it was, but they did some goofy technological error that was basically like pointing directly at Ron and his dad. And it was like, okay, guys, like, yeah, we know.
That's crazy.
And then since then, he didn't, spoiler alert, he didn't win. And I think Q has been dormant since then.
Okay. Yeah. It's so crazy how these things just like take over the mainstream conversation and then
just
disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm sure that there's still people out there who are waiting for the Great Awakening and crossing their fingers for the day that it comes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of happy that they will not get it.
Yeah. As a good thing.
I'm curious from a technical standpoint. So 1,500 hours of footage, like what software do you use? How do you organize that stuff? Do you have assistants and is it searchable? You mentioned transcripts earlier. Like what's like a little bit of the nitty gritty of like, you sit in that chair in front of your computer. Like, how do you look for stuff? How do you find stuff? How do you get inspired by the footage?
We cut on Avid, and everything is like a shared project. So it's Avid with a Nexus hardware that's storing all the footage. And it's generally, I like to have it organized by date, especially when you're shooting over such a long period of time. Like they started shooting in 2020 and they stopped. I think the last shoot was in January of 2024. So I like to do it by date and then like a little descriptor next to the bin sometimes of like, Tanya interview or Missouri B-roll or something, whatever. You get all your interviews transcribed and then you have them script synced in Avid, which is like, the transcript is in Avid and you can read it and word search it. And then you just click on a word and then boom, it pops up that sentence, that line in your monitor.
And I'm curious about in this 1,500 hours, how much of it in the moment when they're shooting do they think is going to be usable? Do you know what I mean? Like certainly there are moments where they're like, oh, this is good. We should make a note of this. This is going to be a big part of it. But there's got to be a lot that's kind of just like, well, something could happen, right? Even though it's not happening right now, we still have to be rolling. Or do they stand down on that stuff? Like, what's the logic on when you're in it for the long haul and you're just kind of waiting for something to happen, but you're watching grass grow in a certain sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think when in doubt, roll it out. Like, don't stop. And that's really, I mean, they shoot, I mean, almost everything. I try to encourage people to shoot before you get there, shoot as they're leaving, because, it's easier to have for you to just keep rolling than to have to go back and get something else because you missed it or you want something else or whatever. So they're rolling. I mean, interviews, it's kind of easy because it's like, okay, you sit down in the chair, start talking, and then you get up and you're done. But like, there's a lot of verite stuff in the show, and there's like, I mean, there's probably hours and hours of footage of Tanya just feeding all the animals that live on her property.
Yeah,
and they just keep going.
And also that to your Oren's question about organization, she's not saying, okay, chimpanzee number 5, I'm feeding you now. Right. Like, so then the transcription isn't picking that up. Right. So,
I mean, unless it's dialogue driven, you usually wouldn't transcribe verite. And in that case, you would definitely just watch it and put locators on it.
Gotcha.
And then you can go back and, I like to, if I see something good, I'll put a locator on it. If it's really good, I'll I write down what it is so I know. And then I'll put some stars next to it if I think it's good. And if I think it's really good, I'll just, hit asterisks 7 times or whatever. Sure. And then you go back and you word search the stars and it's like, okay, everything goes away. And then it's just like, oh, this is everything that I thought was really awesome.
Interesting.
That's cool. And do you ever you're like, wow, this shot is just beautiful. I'm going to try to find a way to get it into the edit. Like
100%.
How much of it is like visual versus storytelling?
Story is always the most important thing. But, I wouldn't put, if aliens landed in Tanya's backyard, maybe the documentary would change and we'd use it. But, I wouldn't just try to jam that in there. But a lot of it is like, if they're shooting just like scenics or atmospherics in the town or in Missouri or whatever, it's like, oh, this is a really great shot of this church, or they shot this dead armadillo on the side of the road, and I'll just like put that in a bin and be like, all right, at some point I'm going to have to do like a little sense of place thing about Missouri, and I know that I'll have a couple of good things over there, and I'll just go to
some heavy-handed metaphors just ready to go.
yeah. There's a couple of those. There's a shot of like a stuffed chimpanzee that's like in a chain link fence, and it's like all mangled up. And we definitely have that.
Like, okay, somewhere. Reality. This is too on the nose.
Yeah.
Is there kind of my last kind of question, just more of a general documentary editing question, but is there like a documentary like film language that you feel like that, like something that you subscribe to? Like, first let's introduce the place, then let's introduce the character, and I guess I'm curious like a little bit about the style of like documentary editing, and if like there's probably trends that come and go. I mean, whether it's like a lot of B-roll, whether it's drone shots, whether it's like
drone shots is a real trend. Yeah. We tried to use as few drone shots as possible in Chimp Creek, just because it's everybody uses it. And then not that you can't use it, but we were just trying to quietly rebel.
Well, now they can, is the thing.
Right.
Before it was like, well, we don't have a helicopter, so I guess we don't see an aerial shot of the town we're shooting in. Or whatever,
well, it was production value was defined, like the budget of the documentary was kind of defined by if you have the aerial. But I remember when American Vandal season 2 came out, they have a drone shot of the school, and the kids that are narrating the show say, Netflix bought our show and now we have drone shots. And I thought that was like such a good kind of knock at documentaries.
That's
like,
great. I mean, to answer your question, like I don't think that there is, and I think because it can kind of be whatever you want. Like you could do it just like, okay, would you see a drone shot into the town, and then a shot of the house, and then the medium, and then the close up. Like you could do that if you want. But you could also just come right in on the close up on somebody's face, or there's really no rules.
But I guess, what about for Chimp Crazy specifically? Did you guys make any rules? Like, hey, we always, like, this is how we transition. We stop down. This is how we use titles. This is how we use interview clips. This is how we stylize things, or split screens, or...
No. I mean, I think we're all of our editors have been around for a long time. So we all kind of have just like basic editing DNA in us, but we never were like, we didn't want to prescribe anything. I mean, the only actually, one prescription that was really important that came down from Eric early on, which wasn't like, it was more thematic and stylistic, was like, we don't want this to be sad. Like there are sad moments in the show, but it would be very, very easy for people to see a chimpanzee in a cage, which is not a good thing, and be like, I don't want to watch this, turn it off. So he was like, we cannot bum out the audience. And that was something that we always kept in mind. And in both constructing scenes and in the ordering of scenes, like sometimes there'd be a section like, okay, this is just too sad. We have to split this up. What can we put in the middle that will work to really like emotionally regulate things? So that was a big prescription.
That's such a good takeaway for not just documentary filmmaking, but like any type of filmmaking. Because I feel like, and I see this with a lot of like early career filmmakers and first time filmmakers, is they've learned that you just need to like punish your characters like as much as possible.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then you're watching like the first 30 minutes of a movie, and the characters are just like shit on and angry and so sad, and you're like, I don't really,
you don't understand.
I'm not enjoying
exactly. Yeah,
this movie.
Yeah,
like I'm not rooting for this person. Yeah, I think like maybe studio people will give the note that someone's like not likable, and people get annoyed by that note. But really, it's just an imbalanced edit, right? When
you have to balance the emotions, balance the themes. It was very, very important for us, and we were lucky because like, a lot of times we would have scenes. There's a lot of comedy in this series, and one of our main characters is a clown. Like our proxy director Dwayne, he's a clown. Like that's how one of his jobs.
What's a proxy director?
Well, it's something that we kind of made up for the show. I mean, basically after Tiger King, Eric Goodard, our director, directed Tiger King, and after Tiger King, people in the animal world didn't want to talk to him, so he couldn't just walk in and be like, "Hi, I'm Eric Goodard of Tiger King. Everyone." Half the people that I just filmed with are in jail now. I would love to talk to you. When can we sit down?
I'm Chris Hansen. I'd love to talk to you.
Exactly. So what we did, and we're open about this in the show, it comes out within the first 10 minutes, is we hired this guy, Dwayne Cunningham, who was a clown at Ringling Brothers for a long time, to sort of pose as an undercover director. And what made Dwayne unique is that, first of all, he's a performer, so he's very charismatic and he knows how to talk to people. And he's really he's like a great guy. But he's been working in the animal industry for his whole life. So he was working with animals at the Ringling Brothers, and then he was working at like zoos and stuff like that. And he for a period of time in the 90s, he was smuggling rare chameleons into Florida from the Bahamas, and he got arrested. And he did 10 months in a federal penitentiary for breaking, I forget the name of the law, but so he had this like animal street cred, and then he could get us in the door. So we were trying to figure out like, what do we call this?
He's seen some shit. Do you know what I mean? Like he's done time, right? So like,
but how did you get him on your side and not on the side of the animal smugglers?
Eric and Jeremy, they approached him and they asked him if he wanted to do it, and he said yes.
That's crazy. So is he like on the surveillance thing, or like?
No, so he would just he would go in and then just report back later. And I mean, he's never made television before. He's been in front of the camera plenty. He was also a stand-up comedian, but he's a resilient guy, and he took to it really quickly, and he did a good job. So he was conducting a lot of the interviews, and we would prep with him beforehand, and then he'd report back. But yeah, he had his hand on the wheel. They're very guarded, the animal the animal people.
Sure.
I just want to be clear. It wasn't like a sting operation.
Yeah.
I'm curious, since you were kind of training this guy to go run these interviews, are there some standard questions that's like just in an exploration? Like, hey, we know this woman lives with a chimp. Here's a list of questions. What are
the editors, we would write the questions for interviews in post. And actually but by the time I started, Tanya was figuring out what was going on right about when I started. And then she cut off ties with Dwayne. And then ultimately they were able to reconnect. And then Dwayne introduced Eric. And then Eric was able to have a direct hand in directing in the field.
When you say figure out what was going on, like she realized, her secrets are being revealed, essentially? Is that what you mean?
I mean, long story short is that she had the chimp. She let us know the chimp was in the basement. And then we knew, and production didn't do anything for a few months because they were trying to figure out what to do because it's a very unique situation. They were trying to have Tanya lead them to more people with chimpanzees down the line. And also it's like,
wait, was it illegal for her to have the chimp?
No, in Missouri, it's not illegal. She did transport the chimp over state lines, and she did
steal it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it was technically, it was kind of her property. I don't know all the legal particulars in that, but she lied to a federal judge more than once about having the chimp. So that was a crime that she had committed. But ultimately, she had this chimpanzee, and we knew about it. And then when she said she was going to euthanize the chimp, then the production decided, okay, we have to do something, and they notified PETA, who notified the Southern District of Missouri or wherever they live, and then they had a court order to go in and get Tonka and remove him. And so that happened about a month before I started. And then after that, she was like, "Oh, how did this happen?" And then she figured out that Dwayne was connected to Eric, and that Eric and Dwayne had turned her in.
Wow! And then she continued doing the documentary.
Well, he was dark for a while, and then Wayne was able to reconnect with her and introduce her to Eric, and then she filmed with us for another year and changed.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Well, so now, what are you guys nominated for? That you?
We just won the ACE Eddie Award a couple of months ago for Best Edited Documentary Series, and now we're up for consideration for the Emmys. So it's outstanding nonfiction series, outstanding picture writing for a nonfiction program. All
like consideration to be nominated, or you've been nominated.
We're submitting ourselves to be nominated. So the nomination voting starts June 12th.
And that stuff is like expensive, right? Like, don't you have to spend like $750,000?
Evan doesn't spend it, but yeah.
To get your copy of your shows like mailed to every
it's not member, that much. And the networks usually cover that. But if you want to promote your show in the meantime, that's expensive. Networks pay for that. People hire publicists. There's a lot of song and dance to the Emmy process.
Who are the other big ones here? Who's the competition?
The big competition is 100-Foot Wave, Social Studies, Ren Fair, Simone Biles Rising, Chef's Table. I'm sure there's definitely more. I'm going to leave some out, so no disrespect. There's a lot of good.
I've only heard of one of them.
Okay, Pee-wee.
The Paul Rubens documentary.
Yeah,
I heard of that one too.
Yeah.
Do you know? I'm assuming that Doc World probably at that level is pretty tight. Like, do you know like most of those other editors and stuff?
I've met a couple of I think two of the 100-Foot Wave guys. One of our editors, Adrian, she worked on the first season of 100-Foot Wave a couple of years ago. I'm blanking on. Yeah, I mean, I either know some of them personally, and I definitely am familiar with pretty much everyone's name.
Cool.
But it's a pretty tight community.
If any of our listeners are kind of interested in getting into documentary filmmaking or editing, like, do you have any advice on like how to get into it? It seems like a hard nut to crack. It's not like, I mean, I guess you could just go make a documentary short in the same way.
You could, yeah. I mean, honestly, you could. One of the things about documentaries is that the cost of entry is comparatively low to the stuff that you guys do. So you could just get your phone and go shoot a documentary, put it on YouTube. And
I have an old friend who didn't use his phone, but like did just that. And he was honestly, was also like, oh, I think that it's easier to like get into, there are fewer documentaries and film festivals. So like he had like a better shot basically.
Yeah.
And it launched his career. He's in Australia right now shooting a feature,
a documentary feature?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, this was a long time ago that he was like, and also to be fair, the short doc he did was very good. So it wasn't like,
and he's Errol Morris's son.
Yeah. Yeah. Gerald.
Gerald.
I think if you want to get into it, like, watch a lot of documentaries, and I would hit up people, watch documentaries, figure out the ones you like, figure out who made those, and email those people.
Yeah, email Evan Wise, unless he's snowboarding.
Yeah, people do that all the time. I get emails all the time of like, hey, I'm like a up and coming doc editor. I'd love to pick your brain or whatever, and it's fun. They're always nice. It always feels good to like.
Isn't that the plot of that Noah Baumbach movie with Ben Stiller and Adam Driver?
Oh, what's that movie called? Is Young, Old at Heart? Young.
While we're young.
While we're young. Oh yeah, I like that movie actually.
Me too.
Arthritis.
Yeah.
Is that line in it?
I don't remember.
Evan, you watch any scripted stuff or you're?
Yeah, I've been watching the studio. No. I believe I like scripted stuff because then I can kind of like turn off the doc part of my brain and just get into it. But I've been watching the studio. I've been watching Paradise. Pit. I really love the Pit. There, all the big major players.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask
you. While we're young.
Sorry. My last question for you on the same note of like new documentary filmmakers. If you were like trying to pick a topic for a documentary, like what's, especially if you're, going to shoot something on your phone, like I assume like interviewing grandma about like her childhood is like what are the things
unless it's really incredible.
Well, you kind of touched on it a little bit when we talked about Chimp Crazy, like a world that no one's seen, a character that pops off the screen.
No one's seen my grandma's living room.
Yeah.
Which is really sweet. So
true
nice.
Crime, celebrities, a murder, cults. No. If you want to sell to a network, that's kind of what it has to be. But I would say start with something that you have a personal connection with. So you already have knowledge about it and maybe a perspective that someone else doesn't, and use that as a stepping stone. Like maybe that's the first one you make and it's 5 minutes long, and then you learn about the process, or maybe you find something else while you're working on that, and then step further away from yourself.
Yeah,
that's great.
It is. I do wish I had more interesting subcultures that I was exposed to. I'm like, my brother's been axe throwing. Is that a documentary?
It could be.
Like, no.
Does he have a chimpanzee in his axe throwing?
You know what it is? It's actually like a reality show, like a workplace comedy about the axe throwing club in Portland.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe because our instincts are kind of narrative, I always meet these like interesting characters in real life and think like, ooh, this is what like the movie version of their story. Like my brother is a kind of fascinating person. My youngest brother, he has a klezmer band, which is like a Jewish music band, and if
only you knew of a subculture, Oren.
He was he was like the biggest rock star in this genre of music that really only appeals to like old ladies. And
that's great.
But like in a weird way, it has like rhymes with like the Gogol Bordello, like that kind of Polish ska scene. But then I always have thought of like, what's the scripted story? What's like he's such a compelling character for a movie, but maybe a documentary is interesting.
Or you could do both. Or the documentary could be research that informs the scripted project.
Yeah. Do you remember the This American Life story about Curly Oxide, Oren? Do you know the story?
Curly Oxide.
Familiar.
Curly Oxide was like a Hasidic Jew in Brooklyn who like kind of started like sneaking away and like became friends with like a Brooklyn like hipster rock star and started kind of like crashing at his place and became obsessed with music and like had a band called Curly Oxide that was just like imagine if you immersed a man who had zero cultural awareness into like a punk rock scene. He would dress up in his what's the holiday that's kind of like Halloween?
Purim.
Yeah, he would dress in his Purim clothes, and he loved Britney Spears, and he loved the Sex Pistols, and he couldn't tell the difference. Like, oh, who is this for? And he would call the voicemail of his buddy with ideas for songs, and so he'd just sing those songs. And I know that Tina Fey had rights to the story there for a minute.
Oh, interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah, but it was like a secret life that he had outside of, his Hasidic life. And then at a certain point, he just like stopped. He got married. And
wow, he just gave it up.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say he became Benny Blanco.
Yeah. No. Yeah. But like, so like in like, you could play Curly Oxide on like a couple clubs in Brooklyn there in like the mid 2000s.
Yeah. Life is fascinating.
The thing about your brother, Oren, sounds actually really cool. Like he's has this older fan base, and it kind of doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like imagine the opening scene of like the scripted movie where he's like in a bar. He has like really long hair, kind of dresses like in very like kind of bohemian chic clothing, and he meets some girl there, and he's like she asks him what he does. He's like, "Oh, I'm a musician. I play, the keys, vocal. I'm like the lead of a band." And she's like, "Oh, maybe I'll come out with like some of my friends to see you." And she's like, "Yeah, we're performing Friday night at, whatever this cool little place in like Glendale, and he shows up and she shows up with her 3 friends. They're all wearing like very skimpy, sexy outfits. And it's like, a YMCA type community center. And it's like average age 80, like all these old ladies. And he's like, and just like doing the hora and like, it's just a weird.
But still crushing, right?
Yeah, crushing, but yeah. Just kind of, I mean, I guess they kind of, the freaking that Netflix show, Nobody Wants This is basically like,
Oh,
sure. Unfortunately,
that's a single episode of Nobody Wants This.
It's a single scene. Yeah.
It's like the C story, basically.
Yeah. But well, Evan, if people want to follow more on like what you're doing and everything, how do they find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is Death Edit, which is a name that I made when I was much younger and angrier, but I'm sticking with it.
Pretty funny, a little hard to read, right?
Yeah, Death Edit, no space.
Still funny.
Death Edit. Yeah, it's funny. My other brother's like handle is Pro Loser because he was like angry at whenever we were all making like email addresses. Like, okay, that's weird. Anyhow, Death Edit. Okay, on Instagram. Awesome. Well, I'm excited for your potential nomination. If you're the most watched documentary in the last 5 years on HBO from the guy that made Tiger King,
they'd have to be chimp crazy not to nominate you.
Do you have a few minutes to hang out and endorse something with us?
Yeah, sure.
Unpaid endorsements.
Mickey 17 is on HBO Max.
Dude, is it good? I've heard such mixed reviews.
Have
you seen it, Evan?
I saw the trailer in a theater and I had heard about it and it sounded cool. And I saw the trailer and I was like, I don't know if this is for me.
The trailer's not very good. Yeah. The movie is better than the trailer. It's like Bong Joon-ho, like, he's like, hey, I won the lottery. I get to make whatever movie I want to next. And this is the movie I'm going to make. Robert Pattinson, his choices are awesome. Like in terms of like working leading men right now, Robert Pattinson has like amongst the best taste.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I was just talking to my daughter. She's 9 about what age she needs to be to watch Twilight.
Sure.
And I've kind of settled on like 10, but maybe 12.
Yeah.
But that's
PG-13, right?
Yeah. But there's no swearing really. There's no
simulated violence,
sexual tension. There's a lot of violence, I guess.
Honestly, the gender politics are the thing that I would be the most worried about with that movie. The ways that the characters interact with each other are like really, like, I don't want to say regressive, but like there's some weird stuff that I would be like, I want my kid to be a little bit more sophisticated and know that like that's not the way that you have to live your life. Do you know what I mean? Like it's pretty.
As a vampire? Yeah.
Yeah, as a submissive young female who has no power in the world vampire. Like that's the sort of stuff that I'm talking about.
Well, but the movie's about, waiting, right?
Sure.
Celibacy.
Sure. Sort of. Yeah, I guess.
Cool. Well, Evan, what do you got?
Yeah, Mickey 17's good.
My unpaid endorsement is a documentary that came out a couple of years ago that I don't think enough people have seen. It's called Diamond Hands. And it's just the story of
crypto.
That's it. It's about the GameStop of Wall Street Bets saga. And there's a lot of those out there. And I think that this one is by far the best. And it is like innovative in its documentary form. It is emotional. It is entertaining. It's really weird. And yeah, I just want more people to see it because I think it's one of the best out there.
Awesome. Diamond Hands. Where?
Diamond Hands. Like my hands are made of diamonds.
Diamond Hands. Yes.
Yeah. It's a term that you use, when you hold on to a stock, even though it's plummeting.
Mm-hmm. I think it came out on MSNBC, which is part of the reason why it didn't get a lot of views. But I
watch a ton of movies on that channel.
I think you can get on Peacock, but you should Google it.
Diamond Hands documentary.
It's really, really great. And it's very strange in a wonderful way.
Yeah, Peacock. You're right. Cool.
Awesome. Kaplan, what you got, buddy?
I'm going back to people are going to be not surprised by this endorsement, and I apologize because it's a cliche or an endorsement. It's what Matt says I always endorse. Matt, can you guess?
Trader Joe's snack.
It's a new type of potato chip from Trader Joe's. Have you guys heard of the patio potato chips?
No.
this blew my mind because my wife bought them.
You have it with you? Do you have a visual aid?
If you just Google patio potato chips, Trader Joe's, you'll see it. It's in the kitchen. But the word patio kind of looks like potatoes. So when I saw it in the pantry, I was like, oh, okay, why did my wife buy potato chips? To me, there's nothing more boring. Like my least favorite chip by a million miles is like a Lay's, like a plain Lay's. And even Ruffles, the ridges are nice, but they're still so boring.
Man. I love a Lay's. Just like a straight up potato chip. Yeah.
It's as if somebody took a bunch of different types of potato chips and put them all in the same container, like all the leftovers.
Oh, that's
different
funny.
bags.
Yeah.
So it's sea salt and vinegar, delicious dill, home-style ketchup, and smoking sweet barbecue all together in the same bag. It's like, you know how those popcorns...
Or I was going to say, like a suicide is what we used to call it when you would like get
drink
like a little bit of each thing from the soda fountain. Yeah.
But this is so fun because you reach in and you take one chip out and they're like all kind of pretty big and you eat it and you're like getting the white airheads, you know, or you don't know the mystery flavor.
Yeah, you're playing Russian roulette, but with potato chips.
Roulette? What are you, French?
Russian roulette, you know?
It's roulette. Russian roulette. No one says roulette.
Roulette.
It's just every single one of the flavors is good. So you're just happy no matter what. And so, yeah, patio potato chips. Check them out. Highly recommended for a party, too.
Did they all just end up tasting like barbecue?
No, salt and vinegar, they're all strong flavors on their own, you know?
Yeah, it sounds very salty.
Yeah, dill. Dude, salt, these are all mechanisms in the way that your tortilla chips deliver your beloved salsa. These potato chips are just made to deliver salt directly to your brain as fast as possible. And it's a limited time. So if you're listening to this podcast like 6 months from now,
I think I will pick them up actually.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks again, Evan, for joining us. If anyone has any questions and wants to know about like whether a chimp could beat like 110 people in a fight, you can email us. We'll forward it to Evan. Our email is justshootitpod@gmail.com. And we're on social media at justshootitpod. I'm on Instagram at okaplan.
And I'm at Mr. Matt Enlow across all social media, especially Letterboxd. This episode was edited, I expect, very well by Kevin O'Yang. Thanks, Kevin, for letting it swim up.
Thank you, Kevin, from editor to editor.
Shout out. And produced by Tyler Schmall. And you're listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist Jahzzar. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.